What happens when artificial intelligence stops being just a feature inside a product and instead becomes the intelligence that shapes the entire customer experience? Hello, everyone, and welcome to XTraw AI, the podcast where we extract the raw conversations around artificial intelligence and machine learning and how they are transforming enterprises and industries across the globe. I'm your host, Raghu Banda. On this podcast, we explore how organizations, from startups to global enterprises, are leveraging AI to solve real world problems, unlock new business models, and create intelligent products that redefine customer experiences. Today, we have a fascinating guest joining us, Vinod Suresh, a product leader who has spent years building and scaling technology platforms that reach millions of users. Vinod brings a unique perspective at the intersection of product innovation, customer experience, and AI-powered platforms, helping organizations design intelligent solutions that are both powerful and human-centric. In this episode, we'll explore how AI is reshaping product development, the challenges enterprises face when integrating AI into real-world systems, and how organizations can build AI solutions that truly deliver value to customers. Vinod, welcome to XTraw AI. We're excited to extract some raw AI insights from you today.
All right, welcome back to our podcast series, Extra AI. And today I have an interesting topic. I know a lot of us in the tech world, we started our careers as engineers, as product managers, and different things. And now we notice that every field is getting impacted in different ways. And AI is embedded in every aspect, not only as you all know, I've been doing a lot of episodes with the different domains like health and fitness, or whether it is live entertainment, which came out today. But of course, I do a lot of technical episodes too. And today is one such technical episode where, as you know, 2027, the 2026, the new initiative which I added to the theme is the Thought Leadership Series. As part of that, I have a thought leader with me and with us. Welcome on board, Vinod.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Super exciting.
So today, um, I've designed this episode, maybe calling it Designing Human-Centric AI for Millions, or maybe to put it in a different way, I know when AI stops being a feature and it starts becoming part of a customer's co-pilot, what is happening? So that is where this conversation I want to take today. I know you've had tremendous amount of experience in, so you have spent a lot of years. So generally, I start with a teaser question. Maybe you have seen AI evolve
Mhm.
from being behind the scenes intelligence to front and center customer experiences. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. It's I would say I think we are living in a very unique scenario where we are fortunate enough to have a front row seat at how AI kind of is like a horizontal, which is kind of disrupting every facet of life, and no matter which function, which domain, which vertical we work in, it is getting disrupted. I think the last I could think of is I don't know if many of us have seen that in person or were fortunate enough to see like two disruptions like this in their lifetime. I think that the closest previous one was like where we moved from horses to cars, right? Like, where it kind of redefined the lifestyle of people, right? Like, shrinking the time and getting from point A to point B in a super fast pace. But so yeah, coming back to your question, I would say that, my tryst with AI started, I would say, there have been a lot of smaller use cases where we have applied AI, but one thing that kind of stuck with me is, was back when I was at Walmart and working specifically at Sam's Club in 2016, 2017 timeframe, where I was looking to solve as the head of product for membership. I was trying to solve the problem of how do I drive first year retention up, right? Because we all know that retention is a very hard problem to solve, especially from a product standpoint, and there are a lot of different variables that goes into it. And ours was the annual membership renewal, just like you have for Costco, same as for Sam's Club. And it is a very hard problem because you wait for 365 days without knowing what your next renewal is going to be. And in any other subscription SaaS membership business, like renewal is like the 80, 70, 80% of your revenue, right? Like you
Right.
will always drive acquisition for like 20, 30%, but renewal is is what pays your paycheck essentially, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so that's why, because of the impact on the scale, that example kind of stuck with me in 2017 when we were looking to solve the first year membership renewal problem. Some of our smartest data scientists and product managers and engineers sat together, and they came up with this model which basically said that, hey, based on the first 30-day engagement of new members, they were able to predict with almost 80% accuracy. I think it was around 78% to be precise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, almost 80% accuracy that they were able to predict whether this member is going to renew their membership or not. And that for me was fascinating because now you not only know who is on that path of renewal, but you also know who is not on that path for renewal.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
have close to 300 plus days to try and flip that, right,
True.
with these
True.
members and customers. So it moved from when things happen where machine learning and AI, machine learning is what it was called back then, but when data and systems and platforms and technologies helps you change the course of a business, it gets
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. That too at scale, right? We are
Right.
talking
Right.
about hundreds of millions of members, or at least tens of millions of members, right? In terms of how it's going to get through. So I think for me, that's when behind the scene engine transformed into something that drove front and center, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
driving business operations, driving product management, driving customer experience. I think that was fascinating back then. And if I were to kind of, so 2017, so roughly about 7 years later, six,
Yeah.
7, 8 years later, right now, if I were to fast forward, I kind of feel like it's it's moved from not just being an engine behind the scenes, but now AI has become front and center, where you actually start designing experiences, designing products, building products around
Mm-hmm.
AI. And if that means it's part of your design system, it's part of your data system, because you're also learning, you're also capturing both the feedback loop and the customer interaction real time, and
Mm-hmm.
you're using that feedback loop to for the systems to learn real time
Mm-hmm.
and adapt, and have that. It's fascinating sometimes to just step back and see how humans, like real customers and machine, interact with each other, right? And then that kind of helps build the next generation of AI products. So I think it's not no longer about just building a product, but it is also how do you take AI into your different jobs to be done, different workflows, different aspects of customer experience, and integrate it truly into those experiences. Now, I would also say that one of the things that's coming out, and I hear this from our engineers all the time, is that it is way easier to go wipe code and build a new experience today than
Right. Right.
just integrate things into your existing legacy platforms, right? People are able to, like, a product manager and an engineer and a designer can sit together, or some combination of that, can sit together and build like a new job to be done within like 48 hours. But then it takes 48 days to do the integration, to push it to production, get through security, integrate with existing platforms. So I think that's the next frontier. So I think that's going to be interesting. So for me, I think just taking a step back, going back to your question, I think being able to move from prediction to
Mm-hmm.
being to Copilot, as you said, and
Right.
further to a strategic differentiator. I think that is a fascinating journey that we are all living by almost every day right now.
Right, right. I think you put it out very well. I think before getting into the real conversation, I know you've talked about this last 6, 7 years, the things that have been happening, and your experiences with Walmart and eBay and other things. So, in the current year 2026, when you stand here, I think before getting into our other conversation, what is that is exciting you the most in this landscape? And
Yeah,
what do you think? That is one thing. And the other thing is that because excitement comes, but at the same time, we also know that something is being misunderstood. What do you think is the most misunderstood that is happening?
yeah. So I'll maybe start with an analogy and then answer your question. The analogy I would give is it almost feels like you're sitting in a roller coaster ride, right?
Mm,
Because
mm,
because I think the fun or the adrenaline you get out of a roller coaster ride is a combination of two things. One is the change in speed and change in how in direction about how that roller coaster goes. The second thing, which is actually the factor, which actually drives that excitement, is actually the fear, right?
yeah,
And we are
yeah.
sitting at a point where like fear is real. Like I would say that anyone who says they are not fearing for, the fear of the unknown or where we are heading and what's going to happen to us, what's going to happen to our jobs, what's going to happen to our industry that we are in, or what's going to happen to your life, your family. I think that is a real fear right now, but it is also very exciting because the change of speed at which disruption is happening and coupled with that fear is actually a very unique time to be in technology as a space.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
having said that, going back, I think the key thing I would say is, which is most fascinating for me, is that I think the cycle time, and we are actually starting to measure this. We are trying to
Hmm.
get through instrumentation because I think I truly feel like I've been thinking about this for like 6, 7 months now, and what I figured is AI is great and it's doing a lot of these things, and we have a lot of these Slack channels at office where people are posting what they did over the weekend or what they built and how it's been fascinating, and it's like the builder's momentum. But I've also been questioning like the so what of this, like how, like, and every time someone posts this I always stop and I think this is great, someone got into vibe coding, someone played around with AI. Like what is the so what does it mean to our customers and what does it mean to our business? And that's the piece I was struggling, to be very honest, through 2025. And I think where I landed and where we as a company at GoDaddy landed overall is that, hey, one of the things that we want to start measuring is what we're calling a cycle time. And what I mean by cycle time is not just engineering cycle time. It
Hmm.
is cycle time starting from idea to monetization,
Hmm.
right? Because you have to get through the whole thing. And there are multiple smaller pieces that fit into this larger cycle time. Like obviously there's an engineering cycle time, and before that there's the ideation cycle time where we are
Right.
thinking about a problem and you're saying, okay, how do I solve it? Can I go? And then you get into engineering or vibe coding, right? And then say, can I go build a POC, right? Can I build a pilot, or can I build a UX flow and test it out? And then you go run the test and you see, okay, is there a product market fit, right? Are customers liking it? What can I improve? And then you get to launching a product. I think a lot of the teams celebrate launches. I actually truly believe like I'd rather celebrate landing rather than launching, right? So launching is great. It's like rocket launching, but if it doesn't hit the destination, wherever it is of no value. Like it's
Right.
not of much consequence, right? So then I've been thinking about, okay, now what do you go from there? Like a product is launched, then you have to start running willingness to pay test. Like, is it monetizable? Is it actually, even if it's not monetizable, is it actually a leading indicator? Is it driving, like, say, engagement? Are we driving MAU and DAO as part of that, right? And
Right.
there a path to product market fit? And not everyone is in monetization as a business, but
Right.
is
Right.
there, does it align, does it contribute to one of your scorecard metrics, right? It has
Hmm.
to land somewhere. Like what is that landing, right? So I think the fact that, and there are a lot of manual pieces that go into it. There's a go to market, there's an offer, there's merchandising, there are a lot of other pieces which which either is siloed or is manual, right? And
Mm-hmm.
depending on different companies. So you have to look at cycle time end to end, because otherwise it is just solving for one piece of the puzzle. And people who are like, I give this analogy of supply chain, your supply chain is as strong as your weakest link, right? So
Right.
if
Right.
the rest of the pieces are not strong enough, then it's not,
True.
it's only as good as then. So I think reduced cycle time is something that I've been very passionately monitoring to see, hey, like, we've just started baselining it, but can we start baselining and say, hey, has it crunched the time? Because if it does truly crunch the time and it is giving us real customer value at speed and scale,
Mm-hmm.
then it gives us more shots at the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, before, if we could test, historically my teams have ran over close to 200, 150 to 200 tests every year. Now,
Mm-hmm.
because of this, can we run 500 tests? Can we run
Much
1,000
faster.
tests, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, if you run more tests, then you have more shots at the goal. And we all know that statistically speaking, there are only three outcomes, right? Your test can be a winner or a loser or inconclusive. I don't like inconclusive, but winners and loser are great, right? But then that gives you, any test gives you a good 33% shot at being successful, right? One out of three. So then if you can increase your cycle time from, let's say, 200 tests to 600 tests, then your shots at winning is has gone up by three times too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think I think so speed and scale, being able to deliver that value, I think that is what is very exciting for me. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing I would say is also, um, I would say, is also the direction,
Mm-hmm.
because I think, I measure speed in terms of velocity, right?
Right.
Velocity, speed, and direction, right? So
Right.
direction is the important part of that vector. So if you're looking at direction, then I think the key thing is that, is AI helping us arrive at new hypotheses? Is it
Mm-hmm.
is it only used for execution, or is it also a co-pilot, as you said, for the product manager or a designer or an analyst or a data scientist to even, ideate and come up with new hypotheses that maybe is a blind spot for certain people, right? That
Mm-hmm.
we may or may not have historically thought about. So I think that is very fascinating, because sometimes we have seen some early wins where, the machine has prompted us to go in very different directions than we would have historically. And that again goes back to more shots at the goal. So I think that's interesting too. um, and then to answer your second part of the question, like, what are the misnomers of AI? I would say one thing which kind of sticks out is, um, two things I would say. One, just because there is AI doesn't mean you're going to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
AI, and I would also say that AI also does not sell itself. We tried
Right.
that, right?
Right.
Because everyone is doing, AI is commoditized. If
Right.
if something is a differentiator, it does sell, but everyone is using AI in some way, shape, or form. But AI doesn't sell itself. AI needs to cater to a job to be done. It needs to cater to a business use case. It needs to cater to solving a problem faster, cheaper, better, smarter, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's when it really works. So I've also seen a lot of initiatives where AI is used for the heck of it,
Mm-hmm.
or AI is inserted where you don't need AI, right? Like,
Right. Right.
certain things are better done deterministically than probabilistically.
Mm-hmm.
So, you don't need to do AI there. So when you try and force fit AI just because it's a sexy thing or it's the next big thing, sometimes they end up failing because, it just sets unexpected expectations, right? So, and then the last thing I would say is, um, I don't know if where we are in the Gartner's hype curve, but I would also say that I think we should also try and keep our expectations
Mm-hmm.
more grounded.
Yeah.
Uh, because I think, there are two aspects of AI. One is AI as a productivity booster. I think that's already proven, right? I think we
True.
are all
True.
using, AI in a in a very coherent way. In fact, my daughter who's in first grade, basically her teacher said, "Hey, for the next test, don't use GPT. Like, you have to come and tell a story, but without the help of GPT." So that kind of tells a story that it's already pervasive. But the second aspect, which is where I think the real magic is, like designing product around AI or AI first, I think it is still early days and it's yet to be proven. And I think our friends at Anthropic and Cloud and all these places, right, like OpenAI are keeping it interesting. So I think it's evolving quickly. But I think we get to a point where, I feel like the magic of AI happens when AI is invisible rather than being front and center, right? So I would say those three things in terms of misnomers, just treat it as a tool, just like
Hmm.
how, we had, I don't know, MS Excel 20 years, 30 years ago,
True,
like
true.
what that did to what PowerPoints did, or just treat it, or what mobile did in early 2000, right? Like just treat it that way and see what can you do with it, right? I think that would
Right.
be the question to ask.
I think you put it in a very beautiful way, and I think glad that you brought up this uh, concept. You brought up the names of Anthropic and OpenAI because I was listening into his conversation at the World Economic Forum,
Hmm.
the founder of Anthropic. I
Mm-hmm.
think his statements have been misinterpreted, I would say, when talking about uh, software engineering as such becoming obsolete. I think his statements have been completely misrepresented or misinterpreted. You put it in a beautiful way about the cycle time, reduction of cycle time, and how well you can make it, where you can get much more or many more shots. Let us now get into the interesting aspect or the real conversation where I want to bring our audience into that, right? I think from your vantage point, I want to focus a bit more on, I know we have the engineer, the builders or the coders, then we have the product managers, and then the go to market. I want to focus a bit more on the product management role, I think, on this aspect, right? I think the aspect of the role of product management itself is changing, right? I think whether it is small and medium businesses or large scale enterprises, from your vantage point or from your standpoint, from your perspective, could you say what exactly is happening or how is AI impacting or changing the role of a product manager?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's take a step back, right? Let's
Mhm.
understand the pre and the post, because I
Right.
think understanding pre is centering ourselves and baselining against the pre is important to look at the post and look at the differential. I would say historically speaking, what was the role of a product manager? The role of product manager in traditional sense was broken down into three parts. Part number one, product strategy, which essentially means product manager delves deeper into the problem space, works to understand what is the customer problem, starts with the customer, and sometimes could be a business problem, but you start with one of the two. Then you understand what is the problem and you live through it, or if possible you would try and do it yourself so that you can empathize with that. Then you would start looking at the data and
Mhm.
instrumentation if it is instrumented. If it is not instrumented, you would look at qualitative data like surveys and whatnot. Then you would craft and say, okay, what is the size of the problem? What is the business case? Prioritize. Is it worth solving, or do you want to jump into a different problem? And then if it is worth solving, you would very clearly write down what the business problem or the customer problem or the business problem is. And then you would start, that defines the why and little
Mhm.
bit of the what. Then you would work with your partners or stakeholders, whether it's data scientists, engineers, designers, analysts, to craft the how together
Mhm.
as a team,
Mhm.
right? And then you would go build that. So I mean, right now you're transitioning from strategy to execution, which is the second part of product management. You would go execute, you would go launch a product, you would instrument it, and that concludes your executionary role. And then you move to the third role, which is optimization, right? So
Mhm.
then you would say, hey, is this problem validated? Is it problem solved? How much did we solve? Initial business case was X million or X billion. How much did it solve in terms of customer problem or units or whatever was the measure of success, right? Like, and did we really set out to solve? And do we continue to iterate on this problem, or do we jump to another problem? Like, that was the traditional role of a product
Right.
manager. I think fundamentals of that, or the first principles of that, still remains.
True.
I would say that the big difference that I see between the pre and the post is that Before, I would say product managers, if I can use an analogy, were going to war with a stick, right? And they were relying on their partners for their tanks and guns and whatever, right? Whatever
Right,
advanced
right.
missiles, whatever advanced weaponry to go truly go solve that problem. I actually think we are moving into a component where you actually can visualize you're going in, but you're not physically going in, but you're actually sending your humanoid who actually is equipped with some of the machinery, not may
Hmm.
not be all the machinery, right? So now I feel like the role of product manager management has changed, where they are now more empowered because the
Hmm.
tools have given them the things that people were offering before. I'll give you a few examples. Example number one, every time you want to visualize something, you needed a UX designer to go design something.
True.
Today, if you use the AI in Figma, you can pretty much do like
Correct.
Balsamic used to be the old tool, which did some basic prototyping, but Figma, pick any tool. All of these tools now, Canva, Figma, whatever those are, right? Like
Mhm.
they all provide pretty decent UI, right? That you could start designing yourself. In the past, you were reliant on a data engineer, to go pull the data to give you data instrumentation. I actually think a lot of that data being in the cloud, and now you're able to self-serve and pull the data. You can slice and dice. I think, I know that a lot of PMs in the past were pretty good in SQL and they could pull the data,
Mhm.
but you don't even need that today,
True.
right? Like you can just go to whichever is your Tableau or whatever is your chosen platform and pull the data yourself and see if it's well instrumented. You can see what is the size of the problem. Then you needed engineers to go build the basic code, right, for initial validation testing or prototyping. I think actually right now with vibe coding you can do that initial prototyping yourself. You don't need advanced sophisticated engineering. Having said that, so I think the path or the entry barrier is gone because you can do
Mhm.
a little bit of all the three. Now,
Right.
is that production ready? Is that security ready? Is that customer ready? I don't know. Because I think for that AI has to really evolve. But the entry barrier is gone because for people who are able to flex, can flex in any direction that they want, right?
Mhm.
So now I think that is a fundamental change because before there was a lot more emphasis and a lot more market value for what I call as
Mhm.
purist product managers. I think now there's a lot more value for someone who can flex or who's a
Yeah.
hybrid person, so who can kind of do different things. So that's the first change. The second change I would say is, historically speaking, product managers were also the whole prioritization problem, which is a very important aspect of
True.
product
True.
management, is predicated under with one hypothesis. That one hypothesis is that uh, arguably, because this may or may not be true in every company or every industry, but arguably the most expensive commodity that most organizations had was engineering capacity,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Prioritization was predicated that, hey, you cannot go build everything for everyone. So let's prioritize and let's try and do the most optimum thing possible so that there is a maximum ROI that's coming from this investment, right?
Mhm.
But I think that hypothesis is challenged now because engineering is may or may not be the most expensive commodity because tools can help augment that and do that quite a bit, right? So now it gives it as I actually feel like AI should be making a product manager's job much more easier because you still have to prioritize, but you probably have more shots at the goal. You have more leverage to fail because you know that you can catch up, right? It's
Mhm.
like a sports game. If you lose one quarter, you have another quarter to
Yeah.
go make up. It's Super Bowl season, but you can
Mhm.
go make up that in the next quarter. So I think that's an important thing because I think that would be a big change management, especially in large organizations who were generally risk aversive, to now being little more tolerant to risk because you know that it's not a one all and be all. You have more shots at the goal,
Right.
and if one fails, the next one may succeed and may outsize the impact, right?
Mhm.
So I think that is the second thing. So but in and then the third thing I would say is, in terms of AI, or product managers were very focused on just requirement writing, and they were, I would say, a little bit in their comfort zone. I think it is time for them to get into the more system area and
Mm-hmm.
data area and platform area. So I think that is a pretty big shift for traditional product managers, right, who want to get comfortable with that. So I would say that overall, I think it positions the right product managers. It may not be for everyone, but for
Mm-hmm.
people who are flexible and open to learning and evolve, I think it provides an opportunity for PMs to shift from a uh, approver role to a author role, right?
Author
Before
role.
they were
Mm-hmm.
approving, UX designs, approving data, approving, UAT, user acceptance testing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To now they can actually go author some of those things, right?
Correct.
And that's a
Correct.
pretty big shift, right? And people who are AI first, maybe they'll build an agent for to be a designer. Maybe they could build an agent to be the coder, and there is a force multiplier effect that is quite feasible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, in today's environment, people like, you could survive with one person who could actually be doing 10x, who could produce a 10x impact,
Mm-hmm.
and that truly can be a force multiplier. So I would say, you know, it is like we are moving from a product thinking to design, product thinking to intelligence, product thinking to becoming much more smarter. But we also, I think, one important part that product managers have to keep in mind is, I think, ethics is a big part of this.
Right.
How
Right.
much is too much? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's yet to be seen. Remember the early personalization use
Mm-hmm.
cases where I
Mm-hmm.
think I think someone at Target recommended like some products, and the parents found out like the kid was needed a certain product, and that became a
Mm-hmm.
big ethical thing. This was, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
like early 2000. I think we are yet to hit some of those moments. So I think it is also very critical that product managers also partner very closely with compliance and legal, and also wear the ethical hat as they are building more products. Otherwise, you will end up giving up too much control to AI, and then hallucination is a real thing, right? So I think that's the watch out.
Mm-hmm.
While it can be a force multiplier, it also comes with its cons. So I think going back to the first question that we discussed, I think human in the loop is super critical. Same is true for security incidents. Same is true for being production ready. I think you need humans in the loop, and I think it's just building that right ecosystem and striking that right balance. I think that's going to be critical.
So beautiful. I think you laid it out very well. I think giving even the background about product management and how it evolved pre this, I should say, generative AI era to post era, and then how the role of a product manager can enhance or impact a lot more things for the people or for the person who he or she is interested to get into those kind of things. So when obviously when we talk about products, and of course you brought up a very good point about ethics and governance, which is going to be, I think if 2025 was the year of agents, 2026 already people are starting to say a year of governance, because now that you know that you can build a lot of these agents, the immediate question comes: how do I govern? What is happening? What are the ethical values? And this is where the product manager or the product manager sits in the center of all of these things. So now I want to get into this question about, we keep talking a lot about AI first products. Uh, what does that actually mean in practice, or maybe beyond the buzzwords? Because generally, this is what we keep hearing a lot of things nowadays.
Yeah. Um, so I'll maybe start with a very simplistic, definition of AI first. AI
Mm-hmm.
first means that you're not building the product and adding an AI plugin as an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting with AI being the center of the customer job to be done, right? So if the customer job to be done, for example, at GoDaddy, one of the customer jobs to be done that we look at is, hey, as a small business, help me design my presence in the digital world so that I can look professional, and it can help drive my business forward, right? So if that is the case, then it is less to do with building templates or building architectures and then saying,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of AI, I will add a plugin here, it can connect to Chrome or it can connect to Safari or whatever. That is that is AI as an afterthought, right?
Mm-hmm.
But AI native or AI first thought process would be, okay, what is a customer problem? What is a customer job to be done?
Mm-hmm.
And can we start with understanding that need a little bit more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And use that data in the feedback loop in a more coherent way and let the system decide what should be built and how it should be built and how it should look. That is AI first. So in this case, like we could we could say that I want to come in, let's say I want to start a bakery tomorrow and I want to build out a website, for example. And then I
Mm-hmm.
come in and I say, like when my with my interaction, there's a website agent that I interact with, and the website agent says, okay, what is the business? What is the name of your business? What are you looking to do? And what is the problem looking to solve? And as a customer, I type whatever that is. And then it basically understands that, okay, so if this person is looking to start a bakery in this location catering to this particular audience, and this is the speciality of this bakery, like it could be coffee or cafe or cakes or whatever, croissants, whatever that is. So based on that, it is actually fine tuning and building the website in real
Mm-hmm.
time in the back end, while keeping not just the explicit information that the customer has provided, but also implicit things. For example, if I say, hey, I'm located in a sunny California, I'm
Mm-hmm.
catering to health freaks who also want to indulge themselves with some sweet treats, but I
Mm-hmm.
also want to be. So then you are looking at, okay, so the tone is you want to be friendly, you want it
Right.
to be casual. This is in sunny California, so the sunny part of the California determines what kind of a tone, what kind of a color, what kind of palettes kick into the experience. And then you are also saying, hey, I'm my catering to more like fitness first kind of a customer audience. Then you want to say that, hey, I want to focus on ingredients, calories, blah blah blah, right? So essentially, it is taking both explicit information
Mm-hmm.
and implicit information, and the machine is actually has the autonomy to ask clarifying questions, just like how the dialogue that you and I are having right now,
Right.
right?
Right.
So when you say sunny part of California, are you in Southern California? Are you Northern California? I'm making all of this up, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm just giving you examples. Then you know that, okay, what like
What
what kind of,
exactly?
is
Yeah.
it more beachy? Is it more mountain? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you're
Mm-hmm.
just trying to infer the data that you have, and you're taking all of that and putting it out there. So it's almost like a machine plus a psychologist plus a marketing person plus a product manager plus a technologist, all in one, kind of working together. So that is like, that essentially where that goes is it takes you to the shortest path of completion,
Mm-hmm.
right? Otherwise you would have collated the exact same data, but you would have done some survey, or you'd have given like multiple forms, like like it's, we are soon approaching tax season, and
Mm-hmm.
when you do TurboTax, you have to put in all the details through like 100 pages, right? By the way, I love TurboTax, but it's still a lot of explicit information
True.
you're
True.
providing, right? So you've cut down this whole cycle time. Again, I go back to cycle time, but then you're giving the customer the shortest path to job completion, and driving almost the same or higher impact in terms of outcome. And you're also using the information the customers has provided to also look at some of the latent needs that this customer might have after this job to be done. So it kind of also acts as a seeding process
Mm-hmm.
for what is the next best action, which is, I think, the next form of personalization. So it helps you do personalization at scale, because personalization initially was one to many, then it became one to few. That, I think, now we're getting very close to one to one, right? So
Mm-hmm.
now, because my need as a baker in, let's say, San Diego would be very different from my need as a baker in Yosemite, right,
Mm-hmm.
or Lake Tahoe, right? Because my customer would be different. The journey that they go through before they come to my shop is different. The journey they go through after they leave my shop is different. So I think you can kind of infer a lot of these data points, and you're not looking for individual brilliance to surface all of this. So which also tells me that you are able to do this in a consistent basis, right? Because now you're taking away the individual brilliance out of the game and you're bringing in collective intelligence
Hmm.
into the mix as part of designing this software. So I think there are some critical parts of building a AI first product. I think one, understanding what that initial experience is and truly prioritizing what kind of information, what is a cold start, like how do you
Hmm.
get the
Hmm.
minimum information in the best possible way, and then how do you use that information, and when do you go back and ask for more intel from the customer, and then how do you use that intel and which LLM do you use for different aspects, and to build the best possible solution. By the way, for this to scale, you have to do all of this in a cost responsive way so that your token cost is not thousands of dollars, right? So
Right.
otherwise, it's not viable, right? It's a technically feasible product, but it's not a viable product from a business standpoint. And then once you do that and you find the product market fit and you do this more often, the system gets even more smarter and gets better over a period of time. So I think those are the critical
Critical
ingredients
things.
of,
Okay.
of being like a building like a AI first product.
So at this juncture, I think I know you've laid it out very well. I think we have kind of now coming into this AI first products, and now we see, of course, it is easier for the unicorns or for the small and medium firms or a smaller startup to build that way. But the challenges for large enterprises or
Yeah.
maybe medium
Yeah.
enterprises, there are going to be some challenges when we talk about these kind of AI first enhancements because there is still going to be. So, how do you anticipate or what are those biggest challenges when these
Yeah.
large enterprises are adopting this AI first kind of a thing? Because they have to work on different aspects, the new
Yeah.
products, whereas the current products. But I think your points are very well taken about the job to be done versus embedded.
Correct. So I will say, maybe I think there are quite a few things on this one. This one is little more detailed. I would say I would starting with the use case, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
sometimes people buy AI for the sake of AI. So I think, so I think clearly identifying what is the use case and what is the ROI and what is the measure of success. What does success mean? What is the
Hmm.
metric? How are we going to measure it? And what is the needle that it needs to move, right? Whether
Hmm.
it's cost based, whether it's revenue based, like it's top line, bottom line, whatever that is. So I think very having a very, and I think first principles still hold true, which is why I go back to like first principle
True,
of
true.
product management or business management still holds true. So we still have to know what is the problem we're looking to solve, how do we measure success, and how do we get there with a little bit of AI magic right around it. So I think that's first part. The second part, I would say, I think especially for large enterprises, because um, a critical thing here is trust. And I
Hmm.
say trust because the cost of risk is too high for large enterprises, right?
Right, right.
So I think that's where there is maybe it can also be a prohibitive or an entry barrier for AI in certain cases, because when you do deterministic modeling, you know exactly like what that risk threshold. You know that, hey, this can the maximum money or PR or whatever I bleed is plus minus 5%, right? But then when you give away too much control, you don't know how to react to it. And a lot of leaders don't want to take that risk, right? Because I think they have a big base and a big business to maintain. So I would say the higher uh, the bigger the business, the higher the risk, more the entry barrier. I'll give you a few examples, right? I think if you were to, I'll take example out of a completely unrelated area to me. Like if you look at insurance and underwriting, when
Hmm.
people do underwriting, they know exactly which loans they are approving and they're rejecting, and it tells you it's a human which relies on machine a little bit, because the machine can give you a risk score or whatever, right? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
but the human is making the decision there. But imagine if you take the human out of the loop and you say, Copilot or something else can auto approve and auto reject. It may be okay beyond a certain threshold. If your risk score is less than 20%, maybe it's okay to auto approve. So I think that is again still partly deterministic, right?
Hmm.
But if you assume there is no human in the loop, it is truly probabilistic, and you say, I will maximize the overall payout, but don't ask me on individuals. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a fear of the unknown, right? Like why would the finance or the CFO agree to something like that? So I think trust is very critical. So I think knowing when to throttle and where to throttle is going to be critical for AI, and that's going to be different. I would say if my surgeon comes and says, let's say if I'm going through some health procedure, and my surgeon says a humanoid is going to do the whole thing, and there's no human in the loop, that will share the shit out of me,
True,
right? Like,
true.
because the cost is too high. Same is true for autonomous driving. Like a lot of people have a fear of giving away control to their Teslas because they are okay when they want to, like, respond to an email for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It's more comfortable rather than letting the car completely drive you from, let's say, from San Francisco to LA, and that's a higher risk. So I think it comes down to risk threshold, I think. But I think trust, control, and explainability, I think, is going to be a critical part, especially in larger enterprises. I would also say that the third thing, which I think I touched upon in my first answer, in my first question, is integration. I think that's going to be a big challenge
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of these big companies may still be on, like, mainframes and blue screens and all of that. And I think getting out of that and being, for them to talk to AI, it's the same problem that grandparents today face interacting with their
True.
grandchildren, right? Like they speak a very different language, and they may speak the same language, but the tone and the language, the words that they use means very different things, right? So I think the same is true on the technology world. Like the 1980s software and 2000 software and 2025 and 2026 software is still like 7 generations apart, right? Or maybe 10 generations apart. So I think that integration is going to be super critical to solve. So I actually think a lot of the companies which sits in this intersection who are able to solve this problem, I think
Mm-hmm.
are going to be very successful, right? But
Correct,
that's a harder
correct.
problem to solve. I would say the next one is like data readiness and feedback loop, because Raghu, you've been in the data side of things for many decades now. Uh, I know that historically 80% of ML was like data cleansing,
True,
right?
true.
10 to 20% was like actual insights, even
Mm.
even
Even, yeah.
5, 6, 7 years ago, right? So I think same is true now, right? Like if your fundamentals, if your plumbing isn't sound, AI
Mm-hmm.
is not going to help, because
True,
ultimately if it comes down to garbage in, garbage out, right? So I think understanding what data exists, having a sound foundation, and then building on top of it and building those feedback loops on that basic foundation is going to be critical. As I already spoke about expectations and overhyped expectations. So I think that is the thing. I think the last thing I would say, which I think is the most important thing, is adoption.
adoption.
I
Mm-hmm.
think I think the biggest challenge in some of these big companies, I gave the example of underwriting. A lot of the people, their sole job for many decades have been moving the file from point A to point B,
Point
right?
B.
As part of a workflow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you say AI not just replaces this, it completely disrupts and changes the whole workflow. And if there are 10 people sitting in that workflow, I think the fear of job is going to be a big hindrance in terms of adoption. And I think people will find different reasons to not adopt. I think, and they will say no until they can, and then and then
True, true.
and then the wave will take them over, right? So but I think initially, I think adoption is going to be very critical. We hear this all the time from everyone, including product managers, historically, even in my previous jobs as well, like from engineers. Whenever a new thing comes, the first question is going to be, and I've only done ABC software, I've only done Java, I've only done front end, I've only done back end. Like, what happens to me? So I think people who will be the early adopters are going to be very successful,
Mm-hmm.
and the people who are not, I think, will continue to stay as much as they possibly can, and then if they don't learn and evolve, I think it's going to be very difficult for them beyond that point.
Beautiful. I think you laid it out very well. I think while technology is already there and we have lots and lots and lots of data to solve a lot of these problems, and of course, it is easier said than done. But at least once you start the adoption curve, I think it all boils down to the mindset. I think that is where I think it's very important that you get to that mindset and all. But now let's go one level, one step further. We talked about these AI products and the product managers and how the mindset has to be. The measuring criteria for the success. How do you measure success in these kind of AI powered products, which is like beyond the traditional KPIs, right? Like whether it is engagement or revenue. What are your thoughts? I think for the audience to understand.
Yeah, so I would say we spoke a little bit about cycle time. I
Mm-hmm,
think I
mm-hmm,
think that comes front and center because again AI is a means to an end, and
mm-hmm.
it helps you. It gives you more shots at the goal. Gets you to go from idea to monetization much faster, which I think is really valuable. So I think that one is I would highly recommend. I think if you are able to figure out all the instrumentation in different
Right.
areas, I think that would be very valuable. I would say a corresponding metric to cycle time is also time to value, right?
Time to
So I
value.
think which is
Mm.
I think the last mile of cycle time, right? Like how do you get to that value? And that value could be actual monetization, the value could be in lift to retention, the value could be more engagement, whatever that is in the corresponding industry. I think that is going to be super critical. I would also say, when if I were to go down into a little bit more operational, looking at like number of overrides,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like intervention rate, like, how many times did the human had to go tinker something, right? Because
Right.
like
Right.
how many times in your Tesla you had to take control of the steering because it
Mm-hmm.
was doing something wonky, right? Or in your Waymo car, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
how many times did you have to make that call? I think that's interesting because that tells you the efficacy of the LLM that you're using, right? I would also say total number of new learnings that you got. Like I spoke about hypothesis generation.
Right. Right.
Machine gave us some hypothesis that because of the blind spots we may not have looked at. We may have got to it eventually, but new insights and learnings that is
Right.
truly influenced or exposed by AI, I think is an interesting metric. I would say the second aspect to that is the so what of that insight, like prediction to action, uh,
Mm-hmm.
conversion. Like, if it gave you an insight, what does that translate to? Like, did that lead to lift to your revenue? That did lead to lower cost? Did that lead to better optimization, right? I think, or did that lead to you signing a new partnership deal, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
did that
Mm-hmm.
lead to doing a new M&A? I think that conversion is going to be is interesting. I think the last one I would say is total number of false positives, right?
Right.
Because I
Right.
think which is the opposite of
Opposite of, yeah.
success metric, right? Like, what is your trust and safety signal, right?
Mm.
Like, how many times, I would say two aspects, again, similar to the previous example. How many times did it give you false positives and the so what of that, right?
Mm.
So, like the Target example, it created a big PR
Right.
problem
Right.
for Target, and their stock stumbled as part of that, right? So, did we, for example, through hallucination, it can land some of these especially larger companies because they have a lower risk threshold. It can land them in like the front page of New York Times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the effect of that, right? Did that lead to a permanent brand damage or not,
True.
right?
True.
So especially in the current socio-political economic climate that we are in, right? Like
Right.
something could just be a linchpin to a much bigger impact that comes later. So I think those are some of the things that comes to mind. But again, I don't want to over engineer the metrics because I would still say, and I say this to my team all the time, platforms and technology and AI is great, but it still needs to drive your core scorecard metrics. If it is
Right.
not, it could, I don't worry about attribution. Like in marketing, you have the last touch attribution.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to be that direct. It could be, 10th last touch attribution, I don't care. But if it is influencing your metric in a positive way, great. And if you are able to establish that with a very high coefficient like R square value, perfect, works, right? But I think we need to figure out what is the mean, what is the end, what is the end to this means in terms of what is AI driving and how is that translating essentially into your day-to-day operations, and that needs to translate into revenue or cost or efficiency or whatever is your one of your North Star metrics that you
Right,
are
right.
that you care about, your customers care about, and your investors care about.
So it's always tied to the one, at least one of your North Star metrics. And I think beautiful. I think you've laid out in a very sophisticated way. I think what are the KPIs that you have to focus on. I think at this point of time, I think I know it took a little while to come to this stage, but to this point, but I think let me now term this. I call this the extra AI question, the $1 million or the $1 billion question, which I ask my guests. I know we are talking about AI driven products today. So, what is that truly that differentiates an AI driven product from the rest of the market? I think it can be, you can tell me in one sentence or one phrase or one para, or what do you think?
Yeah.
What should, or the philosophy behind that?
Yeah, I would say I'll give you a similar example. Take the example of payments. Where
Hmm.
payments works really well when
Hmm.
payment is invisible,
Right,
right?
right.
Right? So I would give the same example to AI. Like the one liner on this is AI works really well when it doesn't shout, "I'm here."
Right, right.
It is just there. It
Hmm.
just works like a magic. So I would say few things, right? I think AI works really well if it truly solves a customer problem or the job to be done, right? The idea, I'll give you, sometimes certain product managers, I've seen this a lot even in marketplaces and other products that I use, that sometimes product managers and engineers, when they want to move to agentic, they take the exact same workflow and put it in agentic. For example, search results. Search results operate like you go search for a hotel or whatever, right? And then you get a bunch of things, and then you get a left pane where you have filters, and then you can go click on certain things, you can go see the details, and then you click on cart, and then you click on checkout, right? Ultimately, like
Right.
oversimplified, but that's the flow. Now, when they do agentic, they end up like, and the starting point may be like a chat, right? Like think of it as the left pane where you're typing, "Hey, I want to go from, I don't know, San Jose to Seattle. Give me the best things."
Hmm.
I've seen people take the search results page and put it in the canvas. You have a left pane and they've just put it there. And suddenly now you've taken the customer from a NLP and chat-based interface to clicking on the canvas. So
Right.
from that point, you are just clicking on something, then you go to cart, then you click on something, then you go to checkout. Now they haven't changed the workflow, they haven't changed anything.
Anything.
They just took the first entry point and then they just divided into two pages. And then they say, "Hey, we are agentic." Now they may be agentic from a RAG and from an underlying data structure standpoint, but it's definitely not showing up in customer experience, right? So I think I would say that it needs to truly solve a problem, but it also needs to solve a problem where it is not intrusive, where it is being AI centric, where the follow up experience ties back to the entry point or ties back to the end to end experience, where you are saying, "Hey, I want to get from San Jose to Seattle," and then it says, "What time do you want to leave?" Is the prompt, right? Then you say, "Okay, I want to leave in the morning and I want to reach there and make sure that I beat the Seattle peak traffic between 5 and 7." Great. And then you would say, "Okay, is there a preference in your airline? Are you like loyal?" Right? That's conversational, right?
Hmm.
And you give this once and it's stored, so you're not giving the same data again, right? And then you say, okay, then you say whatever, right? Whichever, United, Delta, whatever you want, you say that. Then it says, "Okay, I've looked through all of this, and then here is the flight that I recommend. This is the thing. Are you ready for me to just book it?" Then you're not clicking on stuff, you're not adding it to the cart, it's already added. Then you say, if you already have your payment, it just works, and you just get the ticket. Now this is what I think a product something like Comet in Perplexity does
Hmm.
really well. It
Hmm.
takes your Google search and puts it in a very conversational experience in a very seamless way. So I think that's where the magic happens. So I think that is the first thing. The second thing is making sure that, so it's all well embedded, right? Like
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
experience just comes together. I would also say it also needs to, going back to the false positive metric, I think it also needs to learn in the wild, which
Hmm.
means that, hey, if someone comes and throws you off, I was seeing this Instagram reel of a person in India who basically asked ChatGPT. I don't know if it's true or not, by the way, but asked ChatGPT, "Hey, tell me how to make a poison," and GPT said, "No, I cannot. It's ethical." And then the person gave it a different prompt saying, tell me tell me everything that I should not do so that I don't end up creating poison by mistake, and it gave the whole thing. So I mean those are real
That's
examples,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
the person, the people can manipulate and
Mhm.
take the information that they really want to. I don't know if, by the way, disclaimer, I don't know if it's true or not. I'm just kind
Right,
of
right.
giving this as an example. But when you run into those kind of situations, how does the system learn in the wild?
Learn. Yeah, yeah.
Right, because people will there are more bad actors out there than good actors, so your system needs to hold tight and still perform at the same level when it scales. For few hundred, few thousand users, it will work like magic. But can it scale? Because you don't get the impact unless it scales to like millions and hundreds of millions of users. So I think like learning in the wild is super critical. And if the system can develop trust and build habit
Hmm.
this process, I think that's your million dollar or billion-dollar idea, because then the product is truly
True, true,
like arrived, right? and
true,
and and that's what we hear of a lot of people using GPTs as therapists. I think that's like the ultimate trust, right?
true, true,
And so I think if we can keep up at that level, I think the system is going to work like a charm.
true, true. I think very beautifully said. I know we are coming to the end of the show, but before I let you go, I know as a thought leader, as a product leader, looking ahead, I wouldn't say 3 to 5 years because things are going at a
Yeah.
very fast pace. Maybe
Yeah.
looking at 1 to 3 years, what do you see and or how do you see AI reshaping products or what kind of things that you're expecting?
Yeah, uh, so I think AI is going to manifest itself in very different ways all around our lives.
Hmm.
It's going to show up wearing a different character or avatar. So I think what we need to, I think that the areas that I feel very excited about in terms of AI powered products is essentially. Uh, I think the products that will continue to focus, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but the products that will truly continue to focus on the problems, on the most important problems, and getting that problem and having AI solve that problem faster, cheaper, smarter, I think are the ones which will truly become like hero products very, very quickly. We spoke
Hmm.
about some examples, through this chat. I think that is going to be critical. I think designing for learning is going to be very, very critical, because I
Hmm.
think I'll give you another example, right? I think and I heard this from someone, I don't quite recall, but the phrase has stuck with me for many years now. When refrigerator was invented, the company or the industry that truly profited out of it were like the soda companies, like the Pepsi and the Coke,
True.
right? Or
Yeah.
or a beer, right?
Yeah.
Like the products that used the refrigeration. Because I do feel that AI is going to become a commodity, right? It is
Mm.
becoming a commodity very soon, and it's going to start powering different things. But beyond a certain point, it comes down to how are we going to use AI, and what is the incremental marginal value that you're going to build on top of the base value. I think that's going to be the differentiator, which is why I think designing for learning and not just for launching is going to be super critical. And the system that would learn fast and adapt fast, and it goes back to cycle time. But I'm glad we are being consistent, because
Hmm.
the same
Hmm.
themes are shaping up in different questions. But the more that happens, I think that the marginal value coming out of AI will continue to increase. So I think that is a very critical aspect of it. I would say, you said it really well. In fact, you said that 2025 was the year of agents, and 2026 is the year of governance. So I think just finding that right balance between innovation and structure, speed and ethics, I think that is going to be super critical. So I think the more where both of those are in front and center, I think it's gonna do well. So I would say keeping all of this together and reshaping the product while looking for not just the positives but also
Mhm.
false positives, and looking at using AI and building AI first, AI native products. I think will give you a better shot at goal. I don't know if someone will still be successful despite having done all of this, but I think it gives you a better shot at being successful than not.
Beautiful, beautiful. I really like the way you put this thought about design for learning, not just landing or not just launching.
Yeah.
That's a great way of putting it out. Well, thanks for your time, Vinod. I think I learned a lot. Hopefully, our audience learned a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a pleasure, Raghu, and happy to come back later because, again, as I said, I think things are changing every day, every minute. It just takes someone to make an announcement and everything changes, pretty, overnight. So, I think the amount of learning is just incredible. So I'm sure as we go through this process, I think there will be new insights that will be cropping up all across. So I think it's just a very exciting time, scary but exciting time to be in, especially in the heart of Silicon Valley right now. So
Thank you.
all right, thanks.
Vinod, thank you for joining us today and sharing your perspectives on how AI is transforming products, platforms, and customer experiences at scale. It's clear from our conversation that AI is no longer just about algorithms, it's about designing intelligent systems that truly empower people and businesses. Your insights on building human-centric AI and scaling intelligent products for millions of users were incredibly valuable. To our listeners, we hope today's discussion gave you new ideas and perspectives on how AI can be applied in meaningful ways across industries and organizations. And before we wrap up, a quick note to our audience. This episode is the penultimate session of season 17 of XTraw AI. Next week, we'll be closing out the season with our season 17 finale, which will also feature our XTraw AI panels, Q1 AI News Roundup, where we'll unpack some of the most important AI developments from around the world during the first quarter of the year. So make sure you tune in for that exciting discussion. If you enjoyed this episode of XTraw AI, please follow the podcast and share it with your colleagues and friends in the AI and enterprise community. Thank you again for listening. This is Raghu Banda, and you've been listening to XTraw AI, where we extract the raw AI conversations shaping the future. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the possibilities of AI. Happy predicting the future with AI technologies, and stay XTraw.